As the proud children of science and reason, we have made ourselves the orphans of wisdom. Dr. Deepak Chopra. We cannot betray our spiritual nature without paying a great price. It is not that we have a soul, but that we are a soul. Dr. Rachel Riemann.
So, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us again for an opportunity to be open and to connect with each other in meaningful, purposeful ways. I am Tana.
And I'm Bruce.
And we're so delighted to have you with us. Tonight, I just wanted to talk about, kind of in a silly mood. Oh, but before we start the silly, on a very, very serious note, we just want to take a moment and acknowledge the deep suffering that Hurricane Helene and now Hurricane Milton have and are inflicting on our fellow brothers and sisters, and just want to send love and light and hope and anything we can to them, and that our hearts would be deeply moved and, I don't know, really even pricked by the suffering of those that are around us, who are seriously, spiritually a part of us, and that we would be open to receive inspirations about how we could bless them with more spiritual resilience as they traveled this really horrendous experience in their life. So, with that in mind, again, I am feeling a little silly today, and I was thinking back, here's my storyish thing. I was thinking back to several years ago, my husband bought me a string of pearls. This is it. It is a very long string, and I wind it up 3 times. But they are real pearls, and I make this distinction because most of my jewelry is cheap, which is fine with me because it's pretty and I get more of it. But I do have a diamond ring and a string of pearls. And so typically when I'm feeling feminine, I will want to don my pearls. And the other day I pulled them out, and as I was unwrapping them from their beautiful velvety suede case, and I pulled back the sides of that case, there they were gleaming up at me in their opulence. And I put them on, and when I put pearls on, I don't know what it is about diamonds and pearls, but I am telling you that the cliche is true for me. They just work for me. So when I put them on, I just like bust into this smile. It lights me up from the inside out. And I was luxuriating in their beauty, right? When this thought occurs to me. How come oyster spit is so sumptuous? Because let's own it. That's what it is. So I wanted to cover, 3 different things that I think oysters teach us. Now, I'm going to own that some of these thoughts came to me from Dr. Rachel Riemann, that I told you would pop up in this podcast a lot because I love her and I think she's brilliant. But there are 3 things that I would like us to explore about this situation of oysters and pearls. So if you will remember with me, oysters are just doing their thing. They're just hanging out. They're just, fastened to the bottom of a shallow piece of ocean. And they're just doing their stuff every day. And part of that stuff is that they just open their little mouths and they breathe the water through their mouths, which has food in it, and they, kind of filter that food out. And it's a really, really brilliant thing and not dangerous except for two things. One is that the ocean floor is covered with sand. And two is that the ocean stirs said sand up constantly. Now, on one hand, that's really brilliant because oysters are then able to have this food continually stirred up, that they're able to breathe across their little inner selves. On the other hand, it's a huge problem because in that breathing of things, they inevitably, occasionally will get a piece of sand that will wind its way down into their little foldy, soft bodies inside and lodge itself there. And the thing about sand is that that's what glass is made out of. And if you look at it under a microphone, what? I actually have no idea what it would look like under a microphone. But if you look at it under a microscope, what you'll find, I told you I was silly, is that it's sharp. It has like little sharp edges. And so this is what an oyster is experiencing with a grain of sand in their soft little bodies. So where they were one moment carefree and happy and just eating, the next moment they are experiencing anguish and woe. Now, I don't know about you, Bruce, but I have actually experienced moments like that in my life. Or I have heard of people who do. If you're somebody who never has anguish or woe in your program, just think of some people you've heard of that do and imagine.
I was just wondering, how literally we're taking that statement because, I've found things in my food, not real often, but yeah, for sure.
Okay,
and they
yeah,
do
it could
cause
be
a
really
lot of
literal.
woe.
I was going for the metaphor. I was. If I wasn't clear about that, Bruce, we're going for the metaphor.
Gotcha.
Right? Okay. So oysters are immensely wise, though, because instead of sensing this potential danger and refusing to open their mouths for fear of something bad happening, they just continue to entrust themselves to the oyster way of life and expose their soft little bodies to this risk day in and day out. And they don't seem to worry and whisper to each other about the dangers of sand. I am unaware of anti-sand groups campaigning against the whole sand program. I also have not heard of some blaming others for the existence of sand. They just do their lives, embracing the purpose of it all. Now, the truth is, many oysters do end up experiencing the pain of a grain of sand wedged in their soft little inward parts. And here is the most profoundly striking thing about them to me. And it has to do with their seemingly brainless response, which is so cosmically beautiful. Because you see, oysters do indeed respond. And though they don't have hands or even, a tongue or whatever, they can't flick this little piece of irritant out. So what they do is they commence just secreting this substance called nacre onto this sand obstruction in their life. And nacre is oyster spit. That's what it is. And that's what pearls are made out of. Anyway, so this nacre is translucent, actually. And so for the first many layers of nacre that an oyster puts onto a grain of sand, it can still see that sand, taunting it, reminding it of what pain looks like, right? But as the layers continue to aggregate upon this little piece of sand, it becomes less and less translucent. That grain of sand begins to grow fuzzy and dull till eventually it's completely obscured. And what was once translucent is now luminescent. What was a grain of darkness is transformed into a little orb of radiance. What was a vexation is now a gem. And I just find that so brilliant. And it also makes me have to wonder about oysters if they know that their drool is indeed gorgeous. And I wonder, or if they're, just reacting to their life and to their irritants the best way that they know how. I wonder if they realize that their continued response will eventually yield a beautiful outcome. And I actually wonder if that knowledge is a requirement to transform pain into splendor. And I do kind of think that it would be required, though I don't know that it's required of the spitter themselves. I believe that it's required and understood fully by that spiritual power that is bigger than you and is bigger than me and is bigger than all of us. And that the beauty is actually orchestrated on that sphere. But what I do know is I do know about myself in pain. And boy, can I spit. The difference is that with me, that's not so pretty. I can also, I know that I also can find myself in my life with a grain of irritant that can be sharp and make me wince. And it can be from hurtful words or behaviors or circumstances or even thoughts that I generate in my own mind. And I can anguish, actually, because I was trying to make myself vulnerable to take in nourishment in my life, and I end up with this aching instead. What the heck is that about? So, Bruce, we've lost your cute face, but we could still hear you, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the camera found my best side.
So not true.
But I am still here, and I think it's a really good example of kind of how life is, just in general. And it's not perfect for it, but I just have always thought about the fact that, we
What?
have
It's
this
not perfect?
right.
Okay, go
all
ahead.
of these
Sorry.
functions in life that are supposed to do all of these things, and then all of a sudden they just don't. And that whole part where you explaining, that it's only trying to eat. It wasn't doing anything inherently wrong or
Right.
so I feel like that's a big part of our lives that are just kind of I don't know, something you don't think about on a daily basis that if everything was perfect, we would be able to eat and drink and breathe and not be attacked. But that's not how it is.
That doesn't seem to be the program of this dimension.
No.
Darn it.
And also just the whole part where you were asking if the clam or the oyster, sorry, one of those fishy bits, as you would call them,
Clam, oyster, they're all the same thing, right?
especially when you're in Utah.
Especially when you're in Utah. We've heard of them.
Anyways, just whether it's consciously aware of what it's making or how beautiful it is to somebody else, and just what that looks like in our lives, even on a generation to generational basis, like with when you're a child and you're just doing childlike things, and then you become a parent and you're watching your children and you can see on a very small scale the beauty of the thing that they're doing just by being who they are, and having to explain to those children that just keep going. And when I was younger and people kept saying that, I was a little hurt, and also just like, how is that the answer?
Right. It's bewildering, right?
Yes.
Come on, you guys obviously didn't hear what I said.
Right. It hurts. What can I do? Well, keep going.
Yes. No, this isn't right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I guess, Bruce, that we don't need to be any more surprised when irritants worm their ways into the existence of our days any more than an oyster would be surprised to find a piece of sand irritating their life, since sand is the program. It is where they live.
It's their nourishment and their irritant.
Yes. Ooh, what a beautiful thought to explore, right? Can a thing be both a nourishment and an irritant?
I think so.
Yes. I think that's what we're discovering, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, where were we? Oh yeah. So how did that happen? So, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes in those circumstances that I mentioned before about, the painful behaviors or words or hurtful circumstances or my own brain coming up with hurtful things, I have done some emotional expectorating. And sometimes my good husband, bless his heart, has been awash in the necorous behaviors and responses to an occurrence that I have in my life. And also, so far, and I'm no spring chicken, as you can all see, I have found it to be true that the thing that irritated me so unrelentingly, so obtrusively, does over time become more obscure. It does over time get blurred. And there does come a point where I'm able to integrate that once painful irritant in a more harmonious way into my life, in a way that brings meaning and purpose, deeper understanding, those kinds of things into my life, where once there was something so sharp and cruel. And I think that when suffering is a way of life, making pearls out of that suffering is a necessity if we want to be able to live well. Thoughts? Feelings?
Well, I was just thinking that the pearl isn't even consciously made. And part of what you're talking about to me just kind of lends itself to the fact that we're kind of unaware of what's going on. It's only later in life when you turn and you look at it differently that you see what it's become, because when you can't see it, you don't realize you're making a pearl. And I don't know that I think I've had small glimmers of that in my life. I mean, I know you're only 29, but
Right. Right. I mean, I have these things to look forward to, right?
right. But I do think I've seen a couple things in my life that have gone from a clear irritant to something where it might have a glimmer of turning into a pearl. But like you were saying, it's not something that I think we actively and consciously create. It's just going on and getting through and getting to the point where we start to see what it is that has become, not something that we actively walked toward. Because I think in most situations, when we are hurting or trying to deal with that grain of sand, that we're just trying to survive. We're not trying to create anything beautiful, at least in my experience.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. So I want to pursue that little train of thought you're having there, Bruce. It's intriguing to me that I have sought for nourishment in my life and have gotten it, but have mislabeled it as an unwanted irritant, to which I have responded by spitting.
Say that
I mean,
happens.
creating necro slayers. Good thing we have spades of that, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
also, to your point, is there purpose in the fact that when we're in those situations, we want to spit?
Yeah.
I mean, is that purposeful? And I wonder about, because I've been around people who are at end of life, and I wonder if finally at that point there is a change in them where they are able to actually see that the stunning luster of the pearls in our lives in the that have been created in the very places where we thought that our response was so ridiculous. Because like you're saying with the pearl, wonder, or the oyster, wonder if they're just trying to survive the situation they're in with no thought that what they're creating is a beautiful thing. And I would say that's probably absolutely true. I'm sure it's true of oysters, and I'm sure it's true of us. I know it's true of me. Absolutely. And I think that being able to look at and integrate that idea into our lives is what makes it doable for us to embrace this living of them, without being in constant and continual fear and whispers about, unremitted suffering kind of things.
Why we keep going.
Yeah. So there's a gentleman, can't think of his name right now, Asnef. It's like friend, I can't remember. Anyway, he said that all art forms are autobiographical, and that a pearl is the autobiography of an oyster.
That is beautiful. I like that.
I love that. And Dr. Rachel Raymond says that a pearl can be thought of as an oyster's response to its suffering. So, what is our response to our suffering? And is it a good thing or a bad thing? Because again, we get an irritant and we start spitting and we just think, oh my gosh, that was so ridiculous. Why did I do that? Blah, blah, blah. Berate, lecture, belittle. And then come to find out that after a long time, it has actually yielded beautiful things.
Yeah,
What if spitting
I've
is
lot
exactly what we should be doing?
right. Yes. No, I am beginning to think on that a lot in my life just because I think there are a lot of instances in this world, even just now, where creatures and people um, would be unaware of the effect that they have on things. They're just doing what they do. Um, Things that we consider that have beauty or purpose. I don't know that they would even be conscious of their beauty or purpose in their very small scope of life, such as butterflies or flowers or um, dung beetles.
Yes. I mean, seriously, we're giggling, but yes.
Yes, yeah. There's so many things that happen that are vital for the world to continue, and in their overall scope of things are beautiful and how they work together to create something more. And on a very personal and individual level, they may seem completely ridiculous or disgusting. That spitting on things or even seeds. We toss them in dung. I mean, what
Yeah,
are we to begin the
right.
world?
And they're so happy.
Right?
They're like, thank you, thank you.
Uh-huh. So I
It's
think there
true.
are lots of things that in so many instances are really I don't think it's even possible to see the effect on a small scale until for people at the very end, and uh, to not have a full view of everything that life gives us uh, seems rather a shortcoming in us. I mean, where are we with that?
I know. And I am saying that I am going to really embrace this idea that, spitting at my irritant is actually a really beautiful response in the end because I do it so much. And I want us to remember that and put this in our spiritual resilience toolbox. That instead of jumping on our case and or the case of others, because of the way that they respond to a thing, perhaps we can look deeper and maybe see that that response is indeed full of wisdom in some way that we're not understanding in the moment. Allow it and have the patience and the trust to see.
Yeah, and I don't feel very coherent tonight, but I'll keep trying to say things anyways.
I love it. Let's just do that.
But part of my other thought that I didn't get put together is just that not only we're not aware of it, but sometimes if it's like a timing and an environment thing. So, like if you take another disgusting example, I can't remember which species of beetle that people use, but around here during hunting season, people end up with skulls that they want to turn into trophies on the wall or something like that. And one of the easiest ways to clean them off is to take a beetle that consumes flesh and throw a bunch of them in an aquarium with the skull, and they'll do exactly what they do, you know, and
Right. And
however
they're just
long
doing
later,
their thing.
yeah, they're just doing their thing. And I think that with people, we all have very different strengths uh, and sometimes purposes, and sometimes we don't see them, and maybe sometimes we do. But I think there are times in our lives when we're sitting there treading water, wondering why on earth we're here. And then there are times when you can find and say, you know, this is exactly why I'm here. I know what's happening. But I think that it often involves a lot of timing. And even with the way fruit and flowers and other sources of nutrients for animals are sprouting at different times, fruiting at different times, uh, you know, we're not always in season. We're not that thing that's the one all be all tool, because there's not one of those, you know?
Oh man, Bruce, you are laying down some hard truths right now. So you're saying to me that I am not the center of my universe. Wow. I'm gonna have to chew on that one for a minute.
Yeah, I know. I keep getting confused with that light above my head too. Just the oncoming train or the meteor coming out of the sky. My center of rotation.
Oh, I love it. Now I do just want to slip a little caveat in here. So tonight we're saying, okay, so you spit. We have an irritant. Go with it. You know, see, maybe it'll turn out that was a beautiful response.
Right.
Are we saying don't ever try to improve yourself or, you know, learn to have different responses? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that you can't always know that you can't always know that the response you naturally have is so very wrong as maybe you tell yourself it is. As maybe you have a belief in your heart that it is. And honestly, Bruce, maybe if we all accepted ourselves more, we wouldn't worry that our responses are so very wrong. Maybe it would be easier to believe in ourselves as good and valuable beings who are responding in natural and appropriate ways. And again, I mean, it does behoove us to learn, you know, in those places where responses truly aren't serving us as perhaps an oyster's response does. There are responses that do serve us and responses that cost us dearly. And so we should look at the responses we have that cost us dearly and learn other responses that can add to our well of good life. And also sometimes we can learn to see that our responses do yield something that's beautiful. if it's something that's not going to cost us so much. So here's a last thought that I have, given Dr. Rachel Raymond's statement that a pearl can be thought of an oyster's response to its suffering. I have to wonder then if there's somewhere in the universe that's wearing the spittle of our travails and luxuriating in the beauty it has created. And you're giggling. And so am I. And it's a valid question.
It is a valid question. And
Because
a
wouldn't that be
beautiful
so
one
interesting?
in so many ways.
Yeah. Because wouldn't that be so interesting if we were as embracing of our lives as pearls are of their oysters are of theirs? And if in the universe of life, our response of acceptance, there it is. So an oyster spitting on their irritant is a response of acceptance because they can't get rid of it anyway. So,
So what else are you gonna do?
right? So if our response of acceptance, whatever that may be, is maybe creating a really beautiful, lustrous, luminescent little orb of light and beauty to things that are much bigger than ourselves. Isn't that cool? That would be cool.
Be very cool. But in the meantime,
Anyway,
we can
go
also
ahead.
just pretend that we are pearls or making pearls.
That's right.
Continue on. What
Seriously.
you're gonna do?
Seriously.
It's
So
still
an
irritating.
irritant, yes, an irritant comes into our lives. If we can't flick that sucker out and just start spitting and just have your response of acceptance, trusting that a beautiful thing is going to grow into place. That's our bottom line. Is that our bottom line, Bruce?
That is our bottom line. I love that.
Awesome. Okay, I think we should call it.
I think we should go to. Hope that this is
Oh,
also
gosh.
a pearl.
So silly today. Anyway, we invite you to be open to connection. We invite you to be open to the work of spiritual resilience. And we invite you again, as we began this recording today, to be mindful of those who are in major times of suffering, circumstances of suffering. And let's watch as we all have our responses of acceptance around this, because we can't stop it. We can't stop it. So as we all have our responses of acceptance, let's hold a space of I wonder. Let's wonder what beauty, after many, many layers of translucence, will turn into luminescence. Let's hold that space. Let's hold that possibility. And let's hold that willingness to see and to help in whatever ways we can one another in these circumstances. And so, my friends, if you're willing, please like and subscribe. We'd love to have you along on the journey for subsequent discussions. And also, we're interested in your thoughts. If you want to leave some comments, that would be of interest to us to read them. And we just hope you have a lovely week, a meaningful, purposeful week of acceptance responses to your life and the occasional spitting. Goodbye.